Prayer. Be still, my soul, the Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change, he faithful will remain. When the sunshine of God's love meets the showers of our sorrow, the rainbow of promise appears. Hello, viewers. I am with my mother today. The year has been very hectic with competition of different tasks for me. Completion of different tasks for me. Mama, I have seen you reading a book. The cover page reads uh, the International Word of Mouth bestseller Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. I have seen you picking up books which are inclined towards spiritualism and philosophy. Seeing you hold this book in your hand was quite amazing and at the same time strange. Could you please throw some light and give us a brief review?
Thank you, Ashish, for this wonderful opportunity and for taking out time for me. You are absolutely correct when you observe that I usually read books on self development and most of the time something spiritual. This book tells us that economic hitmen are highly paid professionals who cheat countries around the globe out of trillions of dollars. Their tools include fraudulent financial reports, rigged elections, payoffs, extortion, sex, and murder. They play a game as old as empire, but one that has taken on terrifying dimensions during this time of globalization.
How come of all the other books you decided to read this one?
The fact is, your dad picked it up for himself. He's a voracious reader and he likes to read such books. I saw it on the table and was attracted to the cover page, which was bright and beautiful. I saw written inside to my mother and father, Ruth and Jason Perkins, who taught me about love and living and instilled in me the courage to write this book. I was pulled to the book because these lines were so positive and true. Every parent, as far as I know, raises their children with lots of love. They forget about themselves as soon as the child comes into this world. They focus on their upbringing and sacrifice a lot towards this noble deed.
So you say you were hooked because of these lines?
Yeah, you can say so. Now I went to the contents and they read as follows. 1. An economic hitman is born. 2. In for life. 3. Selling my soul. 4. Jesus seen differently. 5. Opportunity of a lifetime. 6. Confessions of a tortured man, and so on. In his preface, he writes, he was an EHM. This was the first time I was reading such an abbreviation. I got more inquisitive. I went on to read further. He says that threats and bribes always convinced him to stop writing his book. Some people asked him to fictionalize it, but he writes that his life was not a fiction and it was a true story of his life. In my life, too, of all the people, only one girl said, आपके पास बहुत stories हैं. I understand. Someone must have tutored her. And he insisted that the story must be told. He further writes that we live in a time of terrible crisis and tremendous opportunity. Most importantly, this story must be told because today, for the first time in history, our nation has the ability, the money, and the power to change all the past mistakes. What
What finally convinced him to ignore the threats and bribes, Mama?
he writes that his only child, Jessica, graduated from college and went out into the world on her own. And when he met her and was considering publishing his book and shared his fears with her, she said, "Don't worry, Dad. If they get you, I'll take over from where you left off." She added, "We need to do this for the grandchildren I hope to give you someday." That was a short reply, but to me as a reader, it set me thinking. I also want girls like Sheba, Priya, Priyanka, Monica, and so many of them to emulate Jessica.
Did this short sentence trigger you to read on?
Yeah, because we have raised you and instilled in you a deep commitment to our country as an individual. We, as grandparents, have to do our bit for our grandchildren. He writes that this was his personal story, and yet it happened within the larger context of world events that have shaped their history, have brought them to where they are today, and form the foundation of their children's future. He writes that he began working with his teacher, Claudine, and that she informed him that her assignment was to mold him into an economic hitman, EHM. "No one can know about your involvement, not even your wife," she said. Then she turned serious. I quote, "Once you're in for life," unquote. After that, she seldom used his full name. They were simply EHMs. A boy confided in me, "इसमें अंदर जाने का ही रास्ता है, बाहर नहीं निकल सकते." He further writes she understood his weaknesses and used them to her greatest advantage. Her job and the way she executed it exemplified the subtlety of the people behind this system. There are children I have known and they have confided in me, saying that they would be killed by them. Who are these people who will kill our children? How did a nice kid ever get into such a dirty business?
This is so interesting, Mama. Is anything mentioned about this lady?
Yeah, Claudine, he says, was a beautiful and an intelligent lady. She was highly effective. She pulled no punches when describing what he would be called upon to do. You must read the preface when he writes that the people who excel at stoking the fires of economic growth should be exalted and rewarded, while those born at the fringes are available for exploitation. I know of a couple who came from another country and the daughter had lost a job in India. Economic growth for her was stalled. These people were garlanded and felicitated. He writes, when men and women are rewarded for greed, greed becomes a motivating factor. I must add here, Rajesh, The children of your age, both boys and girls, should not go for unbalanced lives where you're asking for trouble and you get it. John says he knew better, but he gave in for the greed. They brainwash and take you in. Now, this pressure comes from all sides, from your own people and also other acquaintances.
Does he mention about how many EHMs are there?
Yeah, I'm directly reading it from the book. In their drive to advance the global empire, corporations, banks, and governments use their financial and political muscle to ensure that our schools, businesses, and media support both the fallacious concept and its corollary. They have brought us to a point where our global culture is a monstrous machine that requires exponentially increasing amounts of fuel and maintenance. So much so that in the end, it will all have consumed everything in sight and will be left with no choice but to devour itself. He further states, if they falter, a more malicious form of hitman, the jackal, steps to the plate, and if the jackal fails, then the job falls to the military. People who play similar roles are more abundant now. All these were done on Danny My Hubby, and some part of the story even you are aware of. First, the EHMs tried to destroy him. When they failed, the jackals stepped in, and when they too failed, they introduced the military in full strength. And when the military failed, they engaged youngsters. That we are safe today, it is the power of our God.
Mama, does he state anywhere that history will end tragically?
Yeah. No, sorry. Fine now. Is it question number?
8.
Again, a few lines from the book. It is your story too. The story of your world and mine, of the first truly global empire. History tells us that unless we modify the story, it is guaranteed to end tragically. Empires never last. Every one of them has failed terribly. They destroy many cultures as they race toward greater d- domination. And then they themselves fall. No country or combination of countries can thrive in the long term by exploiting others.
How are we to find a solution for the current world events, wars, threats, and bribes?
He writes in his book that we personally must take heed and remold our story. We must become aware of how we are being exploited by the economic engine that creates an insatiable appetite for world's resources and results in symptoms that foster slavery. I worked as a teacher for 30 long years. And in one of the schools, I heard a teacher say that she was a glorified ayabai teaching at senior secondary level. We should no longer tolerate that. Majority of us are drowning in poverty, pollution, and violence. We must commit ourselves to navigating a course towards compassion, democracy, and social justice for all. I like his words when he writes, admitting to a problem is the first step towards finding a solution. Confessing a sin is the beginning of redemption. A line from your dad. He was watching this on the social media. Mike Pompeo was CIA director from 2018 to 2021. He said, we lied, we cheated, and we stole.
Um in the end, I would like to thank you, Mama, for sharing with us the inputs of this book. I also thank Papa for bringing it home. It is quite an interesting one.
Thank you, Ashish. I end this by quoting some of the lines of John Perkins. We must decide to right the wrongs of the system. It is to throw these men out, men and women, I must say. We conveniently switch on the TV and forget about it all, comfortable in our sofas and easy chairs, and say they will take care of it. The ship of the state is seaworthy and we will get nudged back on course. I request our parents and also the young generation